Hi guys, in this video we're going to look at two aspiring champions, and I'm going to make myself a Chaos Champion.
Scruffy Crow.
Okay, so you've seen these guys from the last video. Just snip these off the sprue, clean them up, pop them on the bases here, and they're ready for some sand and then some paint. With this one, I'm going to make a Chaos Champion, and I'm going to try and put this guy on this Juggernaut, and then make another extra little banner to make him stand out. And he's going to go on this round base, and so far I've just got a bit of slate, and that's just the same filler I've used everywhere else. Just sort of blend that into the base a little bit. I think all my sort of heroes are going to go on round bases, which so far is mostly just my demons. Okay, first things first, I'm going to go in with these snips, and I'm going to try and remove the sort of integral base this Juggernaut comes on. Just moving that around the feet. And I'm going to use a bit of sandpaper, I think. This should be the quickest way to remove some of this base. Okay, so I've got my knife out and I finished removing any base that I didn't want. So it now fits perfectly nicely on there. You can't tell you ever had a base. So now we're going to be quite brutal, and I'm going to remove the top half of the rider, including his gun there, his arms, his banner, the whole lot. So let's see how that goes. I'm actually going to go in with the pincers, I think, because this is actually very tough plastic. I'm just cutting down the front line of his Juggernaut. That should be enough. Okay, then we have a Juggernaut just with some legs on it. I'm going to take this opportunity now to just go and clean up the rest of these mould lines, and then we'll see what we can do about this guy. Okay, so we're going to try and do the same but opposite on this guy, and I think it's going to be a little bit trickier, especially as he's got this cloak on. So I'm going to go in below his hands. I think for neatness sake, I'm going to go in with my jeweler's saw on this one. I'm going to start at the back so I can see where his hands are. So I do not want to lose any detail on those hands. Okay, so that's the basis of the conversion done. I'm also going to remove this back banner. There we go, that's freed up his horns. And while I'm here, I might as well clean up these sprue attachments and mould lines. Okay, so looking at him on here, I probably want to have a little bit of a wedge at the front. So I'm actually just going to reuse one of these cut-offs here, so we know it's all the same plastic. And I'm going to file down an edge into a wedge, so there's a little wedge out shape. I'm going to just cut that off. I'm going to pop a bit of glue in there. So currently you can see the wedge stuck out at some fairly crazy angles. That's fine, I'm just going to go in after this is all dried up and just slice that away, and you won't see it, you'll just get the benefit of it. Okay, so I've neatened up that connection point by just chopping it away a little bit, and I think that's looking alright actually. Might try and just refine that just a tiny amount. And because this is all plastic on plastic with plastic glue, I shouldn't have any problems with that coming apart ever again. Next thing is I've got some of this wire here. So this is my normal pin wire, and it's very bendy, stays in position. This came off a bug zapper that I took apart for parts in making a flocking machine, and it is a lot tougher. So much so that it's going to take more than my normal snips to cut it. So I've got a big old pair of pliers here. I'm going to make a banner pole. similar to the ones on the normal Juggernauts, but a little bit longer. So about there should be enough. I'm just going to use a file to just neaten up those edges. Then I'm going to use my little handy drill. Little dab of glue. And that should be permanent now. Okay, so I had to file down the wire at the top a little bit from where it had flattened out when I'd cut it. But other than that, I've popped a little bead on the top there. All my bases have got a bit of sand on them now. Made quite a good banner pole top. I'm happy that my has worked. The guy here with his banner pole is fully dry. So the normal fellas have little cloaks, and that kind of disguises where their banner pole goes in. So I'm going to do the same with him and give him a little cloak. And I'm going to do that out of green stuff, and then while we're at it, I'm going to put some green stuff under these front feet. So it makes it look like he stood on the rock rather than doing a little hover. Okay, so we start with a big old blob on the back here. And what we first want to do is we want to get those two shoulder bits. And I'll very gently just merge them into the ones that are still on his shoulder. I'm going to push a bit of this round because there's quite an angular gap there. So I'm going to push a bit of it around to sort of hide that. Then I'm just going to work out the rough outline of where I want the cloak. And then we're just putting in some sort of folds in the fabric, up and down, up and down. Now I've noticed there's quite a lot of sort of bulk out there and it looks a bit crazy. So to try and disguise a little bit of that and cover up some of my bad sculpting, I think I'm going to go in with this sort of sausage here across the back of his head and his shoulders. I'm going to take a slightly sharper tool. I'm going to try and make this into a sort of fur texture. Because what self-respecting Chaos Lord doesn't have a fur top to his cloak? And that means between Juggernaut, which I'll paint black in for this one, and the fur, which I'll paint white, and the cloak and armour I'll paint red, we've got my full combination of colours that I really like using in Chaos stuff. There we go, and that kind of hides the whole shape of it a little bit, I think. I'm going to quickly switch to my rubber tip tool, and I'm going to redraw in a lot of those lines, except obviously this makes gentler marks, so we get much smoother lines with this one. Okay, last but not least, I think I'm going to try and add a little horn. So modern Juggernauts have sort of rhino horns on the front. In fact, I think even the generation after these ones, after these kind of curvy ones, had horns on the front. So I'm going to try and add a bit of a horn. Normally for something like this I would use plasticard, but even the smallest flakes of plasticard I think I'm going to have trouble making it neat at that sort of scale. So we're going to go in with the green stuff. I'm going to start by defining where the edges are going to touch down, blending them in. Okay, so that's roughly what I want, but it's none too neat at the moment. I'm going to let the clay cure a little bit, and then I'll try and do a little bit more work. And then once it's dry, I will finish it up. Okay, so this has started to cure a little bit, and I've been able to do a little bit more shaping on the horn. Get those sides a little bit smoother, and really get it to the sort of shape we want. Okay, so we've got a base coat on these guys now, and I've started painting, so I've got a slightly rougher than normal brush to get my base layers down, and this is Mephiston Red, and I'm using this on the armour. I think I'm going to do the majority of my Juggernauts red, but another way I want to try and make this guy stand out, I think, is going to be by making his Juggernaut black. But you're still going to have the red armour and red cloak. As with my Warlords of Erewhon Chaos, we are going for the old sunburnt nun, communist penguin look. Black and white and red all over. Okay, switching to a proper brush. I am going to be using some of this Kadar red. I was just debating in my head actually whether or not I should paint the armour in these guys white, seeing as new epic game thing is set in the Heresy. So if these guys were the Heresy Corn guys whose name escapes me right now, they'd be wearing white armour. World Eaters? That sounds about right. But for some reason I always associate white armour with Nurgle stuff, so no, I'll keep them in red. There we are, trying to get some shading on my little DIY cloak. And as the Juggernaut is going to stay mostly black, I think that's going to give you a nice contrast. The smaller guys are basically just going to get whatever paint job this guy gets. Keep it kind of simple. They'll all be basically the same. So these guys were getting basically the same paint job, except I've just thought I might paint their cloaks in black and their little loincloths in black. I don't know yet. We'll see how black looks. Okay, so I've done the cloaks in the black and touched in the weapons back with the black. I'm going to take this opportunity while I've got the black out to try and freehand a little corn design on here. Let's see how that goes. I mean, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Could be better. Okay, now we're going in with some gold just to pick out some of the details. Like the banner top, I think his little knees. Make him look suitably ornate. On the boss man, the top of the banner pole. I think any other details on the Juggernaut I think I'm going to do in gold. And I think I'll carry this across onto my Juggernaut troop in the future. So all these studs, joints, and I think his entire hooves. And then this gives me option to leave that space down there. The impression of separate hooves where there isn't actually. I've also, you might have spotted, done a light grey base coat over his fur. His little fur collar on the back here. I think that's worked quite well, makes him stand out. I've made sure the banner pole is nice and black. And before I go any further, I'm going to give everything I've painted so far a wash of the Nuln Oil. Just because who doesn't like talent in a bottle? And it should really break up all the tiny little details. When a model this small, I have to make extra careful that it doesn't pull too much anywhere. So I'm dabbing the majority of that back off, but trying to keep all those armor panels separated. Okay, these guys are now dry again. And they're going to get an overbrush of this Guncorpse Brown. So I did do this on my Minotaurs and Trolls as well. I decided I was probably just going to go with my normal everyday earth tone. So that is an overbrush of Guncorpse Brown. And while that's drying, I'm going to go back in with my Kato Red. And I'm just going to highlight, just some little spot highlights, all the bits of the armour. Just try and bring a bit of life back into the model after the wash. So on the big guy, we've got the greaves. I'm just going to try and put a little dot in there for the tops of his legs. And then like a longer stripe for his greaves. Try and make that little fold look better. And then the same sorts of places in here. On the cloak, we'll be a bit more liberal, I think. We're going to sort of go back in and give it full highlights. Now I've got Kato Red highlight. You can tell by the names, these are kind of designed to work together a little bit, I think. And I'm just going to really just carefully take the edge of the cloak, because this is quite orange. Something like that. And I think that gives you a really good contrast between that and the Juggernaut. Next is going to be this Menoth white base. And this is again for the bases. So we want less paint than we did on the bootstrap leather. Oh, sorry, the Guncorpse Brown. And just a bit more of a dry brush. And we're just going to go real gentle across that. Just to pick up the very tops of some of this. That's what it looks like on larger sand that I'm used to. And that's what it looks like on these guys. And I think this works as quite a nice base for me anyway, before I put sort of flock or plants or anything like that down. I'm still not sure exactly what I'm going to do on top of this, but there will be something to bring a bit more life in there. But this is the first step. While that's drying, I've got some Quicksilver here. Just going to take this opportunity to bring out his horn a bit. So just going to go around all the edges. This bright silver. Try and enhance it a little bit, try and give it a bit of an edge. And I'll do the same on his sword, just move the tip a bit brighter. I've just got a lighter grey here, just going to give that rock a bit of texture. Okay, it is time for the final colour, which is going to be Great Coat Grey. I'm going to use this just to highlight any of the black areas. So I know this works quite nicely to highlight black. Here's a Rangers Shadow Deep model, and that's the sort of effect we're going for, but obviously just a little bit smaller. Alright, a little bit like that, I guess. So instead of the cloak on this one, he will be getting line shading on the Juggernaut. So that is my Juggernaut all highlighted up. And I think that is this model done. I'm not 100% happy with the way he's come out, but I'm still learning to paint at this sort of scale. And this is just something I Google image searched, just like a corn banner. And in Word, I just flipped a copy of it. So that's what we've got here. So we've got the two images, and then cut it out in a nice little strip. Word also gives you the opportunity to pick out the dimensions or something. So I measured the back banner and worked out that I wanted it about 1.5 centimeters. So we've got perfect fit. So this is from an inkjet, so I need to be fairly sparing with the glue. We've already learnt that lesson. And then I'm just going to fold that round. I've already folded it in half, so in theory when this joins together this should meet quite nicely, and it does. And then I'm just going to pinch it in around the banner pole, and you can see there's even a bit of glue squidging out there. As you can see, I've not got it perfectly in line on this side. That's nothing a quick go around with the Sharpie won't fix. So I'll let that dry. Okay, so that's pretty much dry now, and I've gone around the edge with the Sharpie. Maybe not the neatest thing in the world, but no one's really going to be looking this close, I don't think. And I'll just give it a little bit of movement in there. And there we go. That is my Chaos Champion all done with these two inspiring champion buddies. So once I add these to the Trolls and Minotaurs from my last video, that'll be my first Chaos Company all finished up. And that's all for this video. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. Maybe subscribe for more. And as ever, thanks for watching. Bye.